Before the arrival of the automobile, the development and growth of more than half a century depended on the railroads. By the turn of the 1900s, the Northern Pacific Railway was a transcontinental link that had transformed Tacoma into a bustling city of destiny, bringing lumber, coal, wheat, and new citizens. Soon, electric streetcar systems bustled folks from district to district and town to town. Today, the Tacoma Link Light Rail is a new age reminder of the days gone by as it glides past Union Station, once headquarters of the Northern Pacific. Tacoma's had a romance with the rails since the very beginning. Without the railroads, you might say there'd be no Tacoma.
The first train came down the hill across Pacific Avenue on December 16, 1873. The first station was on a wharf or dock near where the present grain terminal is.
Tacoma resident Jim Fredrickson is a collector of all things Northern Pacific. He'd been in love with trains since an early age. Jim's other love was photography. He earned his first camera, a plastic 19-cent model, by selling magazines door to door. It was just a matter of time before his two loves would meet. Day after day, he would visit the local train depots, clicking away at steam locomotives. Back then, almost every city around had its own depot, and Jim took in all he could. At Tacoma's Union Station, he was soon known by engineers, conductors, firemen, and station workers as that kid with the camera. Then one fine day,
they'd seen me down there with my camera, and they said, well, you're down here all the time, you might as well go to work. There was a position called call boy. Your duty was to call the conductors and engineers and brakemen and firemen and tell them what time to report for duty. So I went to work on the 4 to midnight shift and went to Stadium High School during the day. And I never left.
His foray into the industry came at a time of big changes. While depots could still talk to each other, direct messages to trains had to be delivered some other way.
The orders were put in a loop in a string on this, what we called a hoop. And then when the engineer and conductor came by, they just put their arm under the string and grab it.
After some months as a call boy, he soon started work as a telegraph operator, spending his weekends and summer vacations pounding brass, communicating with other depots via Morse code, living at the station.
You can see the telegraph station, and then I lived in the back half of the station. They had living quarters for the telegraph operators.
But another big change was down the track, a change in the way trains moved altogether.
The first major change was when the first diesel engine came hauling a freight engine out on the road. They had a few diesel switch engines, but I think it was April 15th, 1944, I was working at Easton, and the first diesel came, and that really transformed the railroad.
Though the initial costs for diesel units weren't cheap, the low fuel consumption and low need for maintenance made them a favorite. Next stop for Jim Fredrickson, Union Station dispatcher. In the so-called trick room, Jim was privy to everything coming down the line, and if there was a problem, he was the first to get the call.
A friend of mine that I worked with called our office a clearinghouse for trouble.
Sometimes the solution was easy, but sometimes you get the dreaded call. News of a derailment, a collision. The engine and freight spilled over the ground. Jim would visit these sites to make photographic record.
The first wreck I took was out at Auburn Yard when a switch engine came out and ran into a northbound train and tipped it over into a southbound train. That was quite a pileup.
In the ensuing years, Jim had the fortune to work in an industry he'd always found fascinating, taking photos of the engines that came through the depots where he worked, lived, and breathed. Since the very beginning of his time with the Northern Pacific, he'd been collecting all sorts of NP memorabilia.
I mentioned this Custer route timetable.
Something that continued well into his retirement years.
The New Northwest.
Now at age 79, his collection is a museum of the Northern Pacific unto itself. What started as a desire to collect photos of the near 700 engines used by the system grew into an NP item bonanza.
I don't know if it has something to do with being a child of the Depression. You don't want to throw anything away.
It's gone from collecting just photos and newspapers to builder's plates, brochures, logbooks, lamps, and advertisements for the great big baked potato. And that's just the upstairs room. In his basement, another floor full of Northern Pacific archives and lore stacked to the ceiling.
That's biographies, station conditions.
Binders of photo originals and card catalogs of handwritten notes adorn the filing cabinets of the catacombs. For Jim, it's been a lifetime ride with many stops and many side trips. Since his retirement, he's published 3 books containing the photos he's amassed throughout his time with the Northern Pacific: Railroad Shutterbug, Steam to Diesel, and Railscapes. More than just photo albums, the books delve into the history of the engines and why they were used, as well as the history of the railroad men who drove them.
A lot of what I wrote was about the people and what they did, and that has been very popular in people being able to read just what life was like on the railroad.
If you took a step back, you'd see that Jim Fredrickson's life itself reflects a story of progress and change of the railroads in the mid-20th century. And it's a story well worth remembering.